Ragnarök, the end of the world, the final battle in Norse mythology, where every god clashes with his nemesis. Loki fights Heimdall, Thor fights Loki's son Jörmungandr, the giant snake monster, Odin fights the giant wolf Fenrir, and the strongest of the enemies, a massive fire giant foretold to destroy the world, clashes with the unlikeliest of gods, Freyr, the god of fertility, whose symbol was a dick. Yeah, he had a dick as a symbol. He was worshipped with phallus statues, which is just a fancy way to say that he was worshipped with ancient dildos. And that's more or less the lineup for Ragnarök. And now I'll tell you about how the bad guys sailed to battle on a ship made out of toe and fingernails. So let's do this. The starting point of Ragnarök is hard to define, but you could say it all started with two blood brothers at odds, Odin and Loki, sworn brothers turned enemies after Odin had a vision of the end of the world. A giant wolf, a giant snake, and a half-dead woman would bring ruin to all, and the death of Odin's son Baldur would be the catalyst for all of this, which Odin named Ragnarök. Once he found out that all these bringers of doom were his blood brother Loki's children, Odin decided that it is now Cosmos before Bros and locked Loki's children up. So Loki was kind of mad and killed Odin's son Baldur in return. And then Odin was kind of mad and locked Loki up in a cave where Loki was eternally tortured, chained up under a snake that would constantly drip poison on his forehead. Poison that caused pain so agonizing that every time it hit Loki's skin, he shook so viciously from the pain that it sent earthquakes through all the realms. And that turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because over time, those earthquakes loosened Loki's shackles and the god broke free. And now, Loki was no longer the god of mischief, agent of chaos. Now, Loki was an agent of vengeance, out for the blood of his former blood brother, Odin. And if you think Loki is in the wrong here, allow me to summarize. Because of a vision, Odin chained up Loki's son Fenrir, exiled his other son Jörmungandr, and he threw Loki's little girl into hell. But that same vision told Odin that his own son, Baldur, that his death would be the real catalyst for Ragnarök. But did Odin lock Baldur up to avoid him from getting killed? No. Odin gave Baldur immortality, and then the gods celebrated immortal Baldur by throwing spears and axes at him and firing arrows at the guy. If I was Loki, I'd be pissed too. So during the immortal Baldur celebrations, Loki found a way to kill Baldur, which brings me full circle to Loki now being locked up. But here's a detail I left out earlier. Before Odin locked Loki up, he went after Loki's two remaining sons. He transformed one of them into a wolf and had him kill the other one, and then tied Loki up with the intestines of that other dead son. I repeat, if I was Loki, I'd be pissed too. And then you torture your former blood brother with poison for centuries? Don't mind me. I'm just taking my imaginary Loki earrings off because brother is going down. So once Loki broke free, he took his built-up hatred straight to his daughter to gather an army. Oh, did I forget to mention that the little girl Odin threw into the underworld, Loki's daughter, survived and rose up through the ranks of the underworld to become the queen of the underworld? Hel literally named the place after herself and ruled Helheim and its millions and millions of dead souls. And when Papa Loki came knocking because someone had to get got, Hel and her army of the dead were ready to avenge their family. In fact, Hel been ready. When she heard that her father and brothers got locked up, she started making a warship out of toe and fingernails. I feel like this was gangsta up until now, but now it got weird. But she did where she did. And then Loki and Hel freed Fenrir and Jörmungandr to join them in battle. And did I mention that Fenrir was described as being so huge, his open fangs touched the sky and the earth, and that Jörmungandr was described as being so huge it could encircle the world? Yeah, even if those are exaggerations, like when a dude says he's packing 12 inches, it still means that the reality is huge.
It's bigger than that, Chris. It's large.
And with the family reunited on their toenail ship, they all set sail for Jotunheim to find allies for their upcoming battle. In a way, the Jötnar are the same as the gods. The gods just cleverly invented classism and gave themselves the title gods, and specifically Aesir. They just saw themselves as something better and oppressed the Jötnar and called them evil, even though the Jötnar are their kin. But allow me to explain in more detail. The first being in Norse mythology was born out of cold rime in the ice realm Niflheim, out of rime melting and thawing, thawing and dripping, and that dripping liquid formed into Ymir, the first being, who already didn't do pronouns before was cool because he was really genderless and had the ability to create life all on his own. So in his image, on his own, he created the Jötnar. And while Ymir did his thing, Udumbla, a giant cow who was also born out of nothing, created life by licking a rime stone into the shape of Buri, the first god. So what's the difference between Buri and Ymir? Both were simply born out of a rhyme job. And at the time, Jötnar and gods didn't even have labels for each other and would not have looked any different from one another. They lived in peace and created offspring together. They were united. Then the second generation of those children were Odin and his brothers. And Odin came up with the idea to call himself an Aesir god for no reason other than him thinking he's better. And then he and his brothers killed Ymir and all the Jötnar and created all the realms out of Ymir's body, flesh, bones, and blood.
That escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
From then on, Odin labeled the Jötnar as lesser and forced them to live in the cold realms of Jotunheim. Man, if you send me to live in an ice realm after genociding my entire ancestry, yeah, I get a little frosty. Yeah, I get a little destructive and angry. So the Jötnar eventually just became these evil frost giants who represent destruction. But in short, just like Loki, this is another monster of Odin's making. Good job, Dr. Frankenstein. And this is where Papa Loki and his family come swooping into Jotunheim to talk to the Jötnar's leader, Rim. All chill, like, hey, bro. So we got a cool ship made of fingernail. And we're thinking about taking down the Aesir, you know? And here you're a captain looking for some violence. You down? But despite Loki not being cool and chill at all, him and the Jötnar were so down. And now only one party was missing in Loki's army of evil. Actually, let's not call it army of evil. It's basically Loki's family and his ancestors. So let's call them family and the gang. That's better. There was only one person missing from family and the gang, the most powerful being of all. Ymir was born out of the melting ice on Niflheim. That wasn't just random. Niflheim was slowly melting under the heat of the other ancient realm, Muspelheim, the home of eternal fire. But on Muspelheim, life was also created at roughly the same time. A fire giant born only to end the world, and his name was
Sasa, son of a bitch.
He is the most powerful being in Norse mythology, and his purpose was simple: to die and make everything die with him. Good thing he didn't attend a high school in America. Surtur represents the death part of the cycle of life and death, a cycle that started when Odin killed Ymir to create the realms, when death gave way to life. In a way, Surtur represents the fire that once gave life to Ymir, so it's poetic that he's now the fire that represents the death coming for Odin and Asgard. Surtur was the natural enemy to the life Odin created. Surtur was death. And that sounds super epic until you realize that Surtur somehow also has an army of fire giants that he keeps on growing in his fire realm until the day of Ragnarok. And when you put two and two together and realize they're all males, it's like Surtur was just sitting there beaching himself off and creating death from his nuts. Anyway, somehow solo Surtur created a bunch of fire giants by himself and simply waited many lifetimes for the day the prophecy is fulfilled, for the day Loki came knocking. And that day was today, when family and the gang rode up on Surtur like, hey, sorry to interrupt. But is he joking? Oh my God, is that fire coming out? Anyway, so we've got this ship, and I know you're made out of fire, so don't worry about no wood on the ship. The only wood is right. He's still going. Yeah, the only wood is right there. And we kind of want you and your fire buddies to come help us kill Odin and those guys. Yeah, cool. This was all Surtur was waiting for. So my guy was down, and family and the gang were complete. All aboard the toenail ship headed towards Asgard to kill themselves some Aesir gods. The first to know that family and the gang were coming was Heimdall. For centuries, he'd been standing guard at the Bifrost, the bridge that connects Asgard to the other realms, waiting and watching for this very moment. And since Heimdall could see into the future, he was able to give the gods a warning ahead of time by blowing into his famous Gjallarhorn, a blow so powerful that it was heard throughout all of Asgard, and everybody got ready for the battle they knew was coming all along. Odin readied his army of undead Vikings, the Einherjar, who had been training in Valhalla for centuries and were so many that they endlessly stormed out of Valhalla's 540 gates, each so wide that 800 soldiers could fit through side by side. Meanwhile, Freya had just as many warriors join in from her own eternal combat hall of the undead Folkvanger. Both Valhalla and Folkvanger were filled with warriors hand-picked by the Valkyries, filled with warriors that died bravely in battle and since forever trained for this very day. And if you want to know just how elite this force is, each warrior carried the title Einherji, which translates to Army of One. They were ready, as were the gods. Thor, Heimdall, Odin, they all headed for Vigrir, the battlefield that the fight was destined to take place on, the battlefield where family and the gang had anchored their toenail ship. So now the armies battled and Ragnarök was on. The army of the dead clashed with the undead Vikings. Odin bravely faced Fenrir, Thor battled Jörmungandr, and Heimdall took on Loki himself. And to make all of this even more epic, all these battles took place in complete darkness, only illuminated by the flames of Surtur's sword and his army of fire giants, because the sun and the moon didn't exist anymore. They had been devoured. While family and the gang sailed through the oceans on toenails, the sons of Fenrir had their own battle. The wolves Skirl and Hati fought against the goddess Sol and her brother Mani, the personifications of the sun and the moon, and the wolves won. They killed the sun and her brother. So now it was up to the Aesir gods to stop the threat, mostly Surtur, the mighty fire giant who wields the flame sword that all knew was foretold to burn the world. And the one to take on Surtur was Freyr, the god worshipped via ancient dildo statues. He was destined to fight Surtur, and yet somehow the dude forgot to bring his sword to the fight, so Freyr was killed. And everybody was doomed. I'm not even kidding. I mean, to be fair, Freyr traded his sword a white bag for the hand of his wife, the love of his life. Yeah, sure, romantic, whatever. But the guy didn't bring his sword. It was a special sword. It could fight on its own, you know, like Alucard in Castlevania. Like, bro, that was your destiny. So, yeah, Freyr, dead. And I guess it's fun that the guy who was beating off in isolation, creating an army of fire giants, would fight the guy worshipped by dildos and beat his ass, and that's how the universe ends. But still, bro, bring your sword. And if you think that Thor or somebody else swoops in to save the day, nah, man. Thor and Jörmungandr killed each other, Loki and Heimdall killed each other, and Fenrir killed Odin, and then Odin's son Vidar killed Fenrir by ripping his jaws apart. But Vidar couldn't stop Surtur either, and Surtur ultimately did what he came to do, and burned the world, and with it ended all life. And then the world sunk into the rising sea, and it was over. But from the ashes, a new cycle was born. A new sun emerged, the daughter of the dead sun goddess Sol. She took her mother's name and place in the sky and brought life to a new world that emerged from the sea. 2 humans survived to repopulate the human race. A few of the gods survived. Vidar, who killed Fenrir, and his brother Vali, as well as Thor's sons Magni and Modi. And also Baldur and his brother Hodr returned from the underworld to see this new world with their own eyes. And this is where this leads over into my extra notes, because we don't know much about what happens after Ragnarök, since this is where Norse mythology ends. One might say we are now in this very cycle, or one might say that all of this is just me telling you about Odin's visions, which is the only version of Ragnarök we have, because it has not happened yet. Who knows? What I do know is that this is also the end of keeping up with the Norse gods. So thank you for watching my retelling of the ancient stories, and what will follow this series will be a 5-part series on history's greatest conquerors: Napoleon, Caesar, Alexander, Genghis Khan, and Cyrus. But before that, there are some things I left out of this video for the sake of storytelling, so time for the extra notes. In this video, I embellished a little more than usual for several reasons. Ragnarök is only talked about in bits and pieces through tales of visions, and it's tough to turn it into a coherent story. And another reason is that throughout my Keeping Up with the Norse Gods series, I basically already gave the whole build-up for Ragnarök over hours of videos. So it's really worth watching all of those to get the proper build-up in full detail and from all angles. Ragnarök isn't just announced by Heimdall, by the way, but also by a 3-year winter called Fimbulvetra, which kind of makes Heimdall's announcement useless, because he's like, that's the horn, Ragnarök is here, everybody get ready, and they're like, bro, you think? Bro, we knew about this for 3 years. Have you looked outside? Damn. This winter is not just 3 years, but it's some serious Game of Thrones winter is coming type stuff, and it's so harsh that it leads to a breakdown of society with starvation, war, cannibalism, and with the sun and moon also disappearing, it wouldn't even need Loki's family and the gang to end the world of the humans. I didn't mention Tyr's battle because he gets an extra note here. Tyr fights Gamr during Ragnarök, a hellhound. And there's a lot more to that. If you watched my Tyr video, you know that Tyr is the one who raised Fenrir and sacrificed his arm to bind Fenrir. Now Tyr is the god of war, but due to the origin of his name, there's reason to believe that in older Germanic beliefs, Tyr was once the same as Odin. This would make a lot of sense, since in that narrative, Tyr would have had visions of Fenrir killing him, decide to raise Fenrir instead to change his fate, then imprison Fenrir once he grows too big and out of control, and then fights Fenrir and dies to him during Ragnarök. Great, complete story, right? The Odin we know fighting Fenrir just seems kind of random, and Tyr finding Gamr, the hellhound, a different canine, is also kind of random, but it makes more sense once you understand that it might be an alternate version that developed over time out of the ancient Tyr that was once Odin fighting Fenrir. Kind of complicated, but you get me. And that's that. Thank you for watching all the episodes of Keeping Up with the Norse Gods. Don't forget to subscribe, because I probably revisit Norse mythology at some point. But now, get ready for this new series.